On December 13th, 2007, inmates incarcerated at John B. Connolly Unit near Kennedy, Texas, made one of the most daring and elaborate escapes ever successfully pulled off at a maximum security facility. The 7 men had originally committed various heinous but unrelated crimes and were all serving severe prison sentences. But they became a dangerous unit whose reckless and deadly behavior during the escape caused massive anger and tragedy within the community. The group became known as the Texas 7, something that sounds straight out of the Old West. In today's video, we'll look into this riveting escape and the tragic outcome, the result of 7 dangerous criminals being on the loose with nothing to lose, and they had become absolutely desperate, and without morals or a willingness to surrender, their desperation resulted in multiple deaths.
Timothy McVeigh was arrested by local authorities.
That's where the guardrail, at the end of the guardrail.
It was like a black hole. It was like like a crack. And everything that fell into that crack just disappeared.
George Angel Rivas Jr. was born in El Paso, Texas on May 6, 1970. He was raised by his grandmother after his parents divorced, and he graduated high school in 1988. Teachers said he was very bright and could have been a student body president, but he was always a kid who thought the rules did not apply to him. While some who knew him described him as being polite, kind, and charismatic, others said he was a cunning and conniving master manipulator. Rivas began his criminal career while still in high school, participating in home burglaries and robberies of various businesses. In 1987, he was caught robbing a Payless shoe source, but the case ended in a mistrial. He was busted again for a home burglary in 1989 and placed on probation. He continued to participate in burglaries, but they were becoming more and more sophisticated. Rivas hired a team and used walkie-talkies and meticulous planning to minimize the risk of failure. These skills would be put to use to plan and execute the Texas 7 prison escape. Despite taking measures to prevent failure during his crime spree, failure occurred anyway during a robbery of a Toys R Us near Sunland Park Mall. Police showed up quicker than expected, and a hostage situation ensued, with employees handcuffed on the inside. More than 100 officers participated in the rescue operation, and Rivas was eventually arrested. During his trial in 1994, the district attorney said, "George Rivas is one of the most dangerous men in El Paso. He is one of the most dangerous men in Texas." He was given multiple life sentences. Sent to serve his time in what appeared to be the unescapable John B. Connolly unit, Rivas quickly used his charm and charisma to befriend not only inmates, but also the prison guards. He selected a few primary inmates to be part of his escape team, inmates who, like him, had nothing to lose. They included 6 of the worst, criminals who committed terrible crimes and faced decades, if not life, in prison. Joseph Christopher Garcia, convicted of murder in a 1996 drunk altercation, sentenced to 50 years. Randy Ethan Halperin, convicted of child abuse after fracturing the skull, arms, and legs of a 16-month-old, sentenced to 50 years. Larry James Harper, convicted of 3 counts of rape in which he blindfolded, beat, and sexually assaulted his victims, sentenced to 50 years. Patrick Henry Murphy Jr., convicted of aggravated assault after breaking into a woman's home and assaulting her at knife point, sentenced to 50 years. Donald Keith Newberry, convicted of aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon, sentenced to 99 years. And Michael Rodriguez, convicted of capital murder for hiring a hitman to kill his wife in order to collect $250,000 in life insurance, sentenced to life in prison. Rivas identified the maintenance workshop as the spot for the best chance to make their move, as it was mostly supervised by maintenance workers who were civilians and, as such, unarmed. As Christmas was nearing, Rivas used his relationships with the guards to find out that there would be a staff Christmas party on December 13th around noon. This would indicate a better chance of escape, as less guards would be on duty. Still, simply slipping out of this maximum security prison completely unnoticed was not a feasible option. Guns would be needed, and some violence would have to take place in order to subdue anyone in their way.
Of course, we knew we had to subdue people, tie them up against their will, but these people are just not going to let us walk off. So, of course, there was some manhandling. People had to understand that, hey, we don't want to hurt you. This is not going to, we're just going to put you to the side until we get out of the way.
On December 13th, 2000, right around noon, the Texas 7 made sure that they were working in the maintenance shop, and at one point, only one civilian maintenance worker was present as the others were out to lunch. Rivas made his move using a shank. He attacked the worker and wrestled him to the ground with help from the other 6. They bound and gagged him before doing the same to each of the other workers as they returned from lunch. As they tied up each worker and threw them in a maintenance room, they stole their belongings, including cash, to help fund the escape.
To be blunt about it, if we wanted to hurt people, we had axes, we had chainsaws. We could have done anything to those officers that we wanted to. But we didn't want to overtly or intentionally hurt the men.
The Texas 7 dressed up in the maintenance workers' uniforms, and Rivas telephoned the guards, convincing them that the maintenance crew was going to work on a surveillance camera at the main tower. The next objective was to obtain weapons.
The plan was to overpower their supervisors. The plan was to get guns. The plan was to get out of prison.
I mean, we went through scenarios in which, something else could happen and we, adjusted to it. The main thing is no one gets hurt. Play it smart.
Rivas was able to walk right past prison guards as he made his way to the tower, and they didn't look twice, completely believing he was a legitimate maintenance worker. Rivas continued to move, looking for an opportunity to get a weapon, and then he saw one. There was a loaded gun sitting on a table near a prison guard. Rivas took the gun and ordered the guard to open the gates. Rivas and his crew continued to knock out, bound, and gag any officer, civilian worker, or even inmate who posed a threat to their plan, and they were able to obtain a maintenance truck at gunpoint. The escaping inmates hid within the truck as Rivas, wearing the maintenance uniform, took the wheel and drove straight out of the prison gates. Most of the guards were none the wiser as the Texas 7 drove away towards a nearby Walmart, where a getaway vehicle awaited them. It was provided by the father of Michael Rodriguez, Raul Rodriguez. They switched into the new vehicle and took off, completing the initial phase of the escape. They drove towards San Antonio, where they hid out for 2 days before heading to Houston. While there was certainly meticulous planning, patience, and intelligence involved in this daring escape, these men were still criminals at heart, and Rivas' plan included several robberies to help fund their transition to freedom. The smartest move would have probably been to go their separate ways after a couple days, with each man making their own decisions on how to obtain money, change their appearance, move out of the country or to a remote location, find work under a new name, and ideally restrain from criminal activity at all costs. Instead, they stuck together and almost immediately turned to violent crime, robbing an AutoZone and a Radio Shack, stealing money and electronics like police scanners to monitor law enforcement activity. They ended up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area as Christmas was nearing, and it was Christmas Eve when the fugitives decided to rob a sporting goods store in Irving, Texas. It was a major robbery that included the bounding and gagging of employees and stealing tens of thousands of dollars in guns and ammunition, along with $70,000 from the safe. This absolutely reckless move would be the biggest mistake the Texas 7 would make, because Irving police officer Aubrey Wright Hawkins left Christmas Eve dinner with his wife and son to respond to the emergency call, and he was almost immediately shot by Rivas, and the other members of the Texas 7 also fired upon the officer. He was hit at least 11 times, then run over as the convicts fled the scene. Rivas was also wounded in the incident, he claims, by Hawkins, but the official report shows that he was hit by his own men who were firing upon the officer. Hawkins tragically passed away, and the dynamics of the situation drastically changed with the loss of a Texas police officer. The manhunt had turned personal, and every law enforcement agency in the country now actively hunted the cop killers. A $100,000 reward was offered to anyone who could provide information leading to the capture of the Texas 7. Meanwhile, they had moved to Colorado, and several of the Texas 7 were staying at the Coachlight Motel and RV Park, portraying themselves as Christian missionaries. They played Christian music, held Bible studies, and had everyone in the area convinced they were legitimate. Had they never murdered a police officer, their story would have not been broadcast on America's Most Wanted. But that's exactly what happened on January 20th, 2001, and a resident of the RV park recognized the men and notified the manager, who was completely shocked.
They said they were missionaries from Texas and had gone to California and were working their way back to Texas, and they all kind of portrayed that part.
He contacted authorities, and various law enforcement agencies, including the FBI and SWAT, worked together to create a perimeter and set a trap. 2 of the Texas 7, child abuser Randy Halpern and violent rapist Larry Harper, were in the RV as authorities surrounded them. Halpern eventually surrendered, but then a gunshot was heard from within the RV. Larry Harper had turned the gun on himself and committed suicide, leaving a note of apology to his family. Meanwhile, 3 others, Rivas, Joseph Garcia, and Michael Rodriguez, had driven to a nearby gas station. They were followed there and arrested at gunpoint. The men had no choice but to surrender, although they had the weaponry and the motivation to fight it out. They were taken by surprise and could not access their many weapons before police were upon them. Now only 2 of the Texas 7 remained at large, Donald Newberry and Patrick Murphy. A telephone call from a nearby Holiday Inn revealed that the 2 may have been staying there.
I work at the Holiday Inn regarding the guard. I checked someone in last night. Okay. Are they still there? Yeah. It kind of looks suspicious.
Police surrounded them but were forced to negotiate a surrender. As the 2 men were armed with multiple weapons, a deal was struck, allowing the 2 men to make a live TV appearance before surrendering. Anchorman Eric Singer was taken to the hotel and he interviewed the 2 remaining fugitives. They criticized the Texas penal system for its lack of rehabilitation services and strict sentencing. They gave up without a fight following the interviews.
I've done crime, got to face the music. But they're giving kids so much time that their life is gone. Now all they are is a roach in a cage. Things have to be changed. There needs to be more rehabilitation in the system down there. Couldn't even go to college. Come on. Where's the rehabilitation when you can't even help yourself?
All 6 of the surviving Texas 7 were charged with the murder of Officer Aubrey Wright Hawkins. They were each given the death penalty. On August 14, 2008, Michael Rodriguez, the man who hired a hitman to murder his wife for insurance money, was executed by lethal injection. His father, Raul Rodriguez, had also been convicted and sentenced to 15 years for conspiring to help the Texas 7 in their escape. The next in line to go was the ringleader, George Rivas. His sentence was completed on February 29, 2012, after 11 years of appeals. He apologized to the family of the slain officer before the execution went forward. Since then, 2 more of the Texas 7 have been executed. Donald Newberry on February 4th, 2015, and then Joseph Garcia on December 4th, 2018. Randy Halpern was set to be executed in October of 2019, but was given a stay of execution due to racially charged comments from his trial judge, Vickers Vic Cunningham, who said Jews needed to be shut down because they controlled all the money. Cunningham used racial slurs towards Halpern, and his history shows many signs of racism and discrimination. He even acknowledged that he set up a living trust that would reward his children if they marry a white person.
Should have never been a judge. Regrettably, should have never been calling balls and strikes for a system that's supposed to be equal and fair for everyone.
It is clearly derogatory. The way that he also, the phrasing of it, he's not referring to like the Jewish people in some general way to make a statement about them. The phrasing, the Jew, makes it derogatory.
The unprofessionalism and racist comments from the judge led Randy Halpern, the member of the Texas 7 who broke the bones of a baby, to get awarded a new trial in November of 2024. And finally, there's Patrick Murphy Jr., originally convicted of aggravated sexual assault. He was also set to die in 2019, but a last-minute stay of execution was granted on the basis that he was denied his request to have a Buddhist priest in the execution room with him.
The assistant warden, as we left Polunsky, turned around and says, "Murphy, what's your chances like today?" I told him, I said, "They're thin, really thin." And he says, "Well, that issue with the minister is not going to fly."
He filed a religious discrimination lawsuit and will not be put to death until it is settled. And that's the story of the Texas 7, a story that could have easily been a Hollywood movie, with 7 horrible criminals making a daring escape and robbing several Texas businesses before gunning down a police officer, moving to Colorado pretending to be Christian missionaries, and then getting cornered in a dramatic final showdown. The Texas 7 made an impressive and daring escape from prison, and it might have gone down in history as one of the most successful and epic prison escapes ever had they not gotten greedy and resorted to massive robberies in which they bound and gagged innocent people, stole thousands of dollars in cash, weapons, and other merchandise, and ended up murdering an innocent police officer. And now, the Texas 7 will go down across the board as a disgusting group of murderers, rapists, child abusers, and thieves who couldn't even stop committing major crimes when their freedom depended on it. Granted, it would have been difficult to get money, food, and clothing starting from scratch, but many prison escapees have successfully done it and were either never caught or it took decades to find them. Check out some of the videos above for some successful prison escapes in which, in some cases, the escapees were never found. Thank you for checking out today's video. Let me know your thoughts on the Texas 7. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you in the next one.